Hey folks, it's Chris with Human Project Podcast. I am really excited for this episode because we're going to talk about one of those things that's really misunderstood and we throw around a lot, but we don't have a very good definition of. And that is joy. What is joy? How do we manifest and experience joy? And what does it look like to be so rooted in God that it manifests itself in every aspect of our lives and we can experience and see joy? Take a listen. Let us know what you think. Hey, Mark.
Hey, Chris.
How are you doing today?
It's good. It's good. How about you?
I am joyful.
Joyful.
Yeah.
I feel like you're saying that with tremendous intention, like that might be the theme of the episode or something like that.
Yeah. I just want to talk about joy.
Yeah. Wow. Why is that?
I think it's something that gets thrown around a lot, but we don't have a very good understanding of what it is or realize the cost of not having it. I think if you ask anybody on the street, they'll say, do you want more? And you ask them, do you want more joy? They'll be like, yeah.
Like, duh.
But we're not necessarily taking action towards that. There was a book
No way.
that I was reading, and the author was doing a great job talking about how, I don't remember what the name of the book was, but the author was talking about how it ties, a lot of our challenges tie back to lack of joy. And I'm like, that's interesting. So I thought it'd be worth us exploring together on the podcast and seeing if what we have to talk about resonates with folks.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Sounds good. So joy, that book really brought up some questions for you, maybe helped you look at joy in a different way than you were before?
Yeah, I consider myself a pretty joyful person. And I think everybody goes through ebbs and flows in life. And I went through a big ebb or a big flow.
The trough, the down part.
Yeah, the down part this year.
Yeah.
And I went to see somebody, he does something called biblical soul care, which is kind of like counseling without all of the therapy parts that deal with your brain. I don't know how to explain it very well, but just biblical, like helping speak and see biblical truth. That's the goal of it. And did it a couple times. And one of the times I came in and I'm like, I feel really good today. And he's like, oh yeah, why is that? And I listed off a bunch of circumstances that had happened.
Okay.
He's like, well, how do you have joy on the other times that you've come in and your circumstances aren't as good? I'm like, ooh, tell me more. And so it got us into this exploration of joy. And I'm sure we've all heard the adage, like, joy and happiness are not the same thing.
Okay. Word nerds. So yeah, we kind of glom onto those things.
Yeah. I don't necessarily believe that. I think joy manifests itself as happiness often. Like if we truly believed like what God says, like actually internalized it, believed it, let that drive all of our decisions and all of that, we would have no choice but to have joy. Joy is a fruit of the Spirit. Joy is a command. All of these things that you see in Scripture. And so it got me exploring it more. And I'm like, okay, why do I pay so much attention to my circumstances instead of the ultimate circumstance of who God is and who I am in Him?
Yeah.
And I think that's the foundation for joy. How about you? What comes to mind when you think and consider joy?
Well, you've got me thinking about the difference between joy and happiness, or the not difference, being the word nerd that I am. So I'm still kind of chewing on that one. I guess I'm wondering if it's an emotion. I'll toss that back over to you, if you view it as an emotion or not. The way you were wording it, it sounded more like it could be manifest. Joy could be manifest as happiness, as if happiness was the emotion. Is that kind of how you look at it?
Well, I think, if we're going to go all word nerd here, I think we need to put all of our standard disclaimer on words. Yeah. That every person has their own thing that they bring for a conception of what a word means.
I mean, ours is right, but you're allowed to have different views.
Yeah, that kind of thing. I would not consider it an emotion how most people would consider an emotion. No.
Okay.
No, I think it is a trait more than an emotion.
Wow.
It's like something that is true of me. Like I am like a stance that I am in. I am in joy.
So the way that you look at things.
Yeah, perspective. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I like that.
Instead of the response I have to things.
I don't think they're mutually exclusive.
Okay.
No. Joy can be a response, but not like a emotional response. I think that's where you were going with that one.
Okay.
But yeah, joy, I think we would be well served to have joy as our response. Everything. In fact, what really unlocked this whole box for me was James 1:2-3. Like we were going through that, and his name's Adam, brought up that verse, and it said, "Count it all joy when you meet trials of various kinds."
It's a very illogical verse to
It is.
most of us, yeah.
Yeah. And like most things in James, you're like, that's super practical. What does that mean? What does that look like? And I started diving into the word count
Okay.
at the beginning of that
Yeah.
verse. Because I'm like, what does it mean to count it all joy? Because I was talking with Adam, and he's like, what you really need to do to get joy is stop and think. I'm like, hold on a second. I don't often think about thinking when I think about joy. It's normal, I think, to consider it more emotional
Yeah,
type of a word.
absolutely.
How about you? When you think of that, what do you think of? Do you think of it more of like an emotion?
Before this conversation, I would have probably described it more as an emotion. I mean, I recognize there's a tension there, which is typical in good, rich words and wording, that there's something almost like a river running underneath the surface of the emotion, but I don't know how to articulate that per se. So yeah, I like the idea that it's perspective.
So on the river analogy, you said it's underneath the river. Like, are you thinking it's like the shape of the river?
I guess I'd say like an underground river is more like what I'm picturing. I didn't say all those words, did I? It didn't come out of my mouth. Yeah, an underground river, and then you might see an emotion, like some of the water coming up in a spring or something as an emotion. But I really don't know what that river is that's down there.
Because I think with that analogy, you would look at it as something either your joy is full or not full. Like the water's flowing or it's not flowing.
Yeah.
And interesting. Let's circle back to that.
Okay.
Because I want to...
I'm asking for my perspective to be shifted on that.
Okay.
So.
All right. Ooh, fun. But what unlocked it for me, going back to James, and I think there's an analogy back to your underground river analogy.
Okay.
What unlocked it for me is that word count.
Yeah.
Because I don't think of it as counting, and it means consider. The spot that I got to, wrestling with it, praying about it, journaling about it, is we are being called to stop and think about what is reality. Like if we were to acknowledge all of our reality, not just the little circumstances we're going through day to day that can greatly inflate our emotions up or deflate us down. It's asking us to think about something more holistically. Like, where am I in God? Where am I in Christ? Who is God? What's true about him? And if we stop and consider all of those things, our situations are nothing. Just absolutely nothing. Which is like, doesn't feel that way in the moment.
No.
But if we stop and think about it, it really is. Like the 5-5-5 analogy. I don't know if you've heard that. Like, will this matter in 5 minutes? Will this matter in 5 days? Will this matter in 5 years?
Okay.
I think most of the things that we do don't meet or pass that test.
I see. I thought that was the latest deal down at Subway, so that's good. I like it better, what you said.
$5 foot long.
This message brought to you by Subway. You wanted this to be a fun episode, so I'm bringing it, man.
There you go.
Or you didn't say goofy. I'm so sorry.
Oh, I should have known they're equivocal in your mind. But if we stop and think about what's actually going on around us, like that, I think is what James is asking us to do. Count, consider, think, weigh is another word.
Okay.
Like weigh. Think about the when I think of weigh, I think of like putting two things on a scale and seeing which one wins. Yeah. Like if we were to put our circumstances on one side of a scale and who God is the other side of a scale, it wouldn't even register. Wouldn't even register. And so that's, to me, like we're called to think our way into joy. And so what that looks like practically is my goal in the future is if I have like something happens, like lots of major things happened this year for both of us. And something happens and I get to joy at some point, whether that's weeks later, months later. My goal of continually growing into what God has called me to as a believer is that time shrinks and shrinks and shrinks and shrinks. Because I think it's easy for us, and where we beat ourselves up a lot about joy is I don't have joy right now. And it's a scarcity mindset for us. Like, I need to have joy, otherwise I'm not doing this right.
Okay.
And I think what the verse in James is calling us to do is shrink that time between when something happens and the time we're able to get ourselves to think our way into joy.
So look at our circumstances and consider, weigh. I'm even wondering about things like analyze, other verbs like that. Analyze those circumstances in light of who God is, what he's up to, who he said we are in him.
Yeah.
And that's the true scale. That's the right scale, the just scale with which to weigh the circumstances. Because to me, like I heard you saying that, and when you weigh them out, you see like what I'm going through is nothing. Like it's barely in light of eternity, in light of who God is, all those things.
Yeah.
And I would say yes to that. And to me, what it brings up is to say, and there is potency in this, like there's purpose in this as well. Knowing who God is and what he's up to, and all the things I just said, that there is purpose within this that I don't understand. So will this specific thing matter in 5 minutes or 5 days or 5 years? I actually don't know.
Yeah.
It's in his hands. And so
to
return to a previous episode of ours, my job is to be faithful in it.
Yeah.
And that is joyful service to God, because I know who he is, because I can trust him with what he's up to, that even if I never get to see it in this life, that he's going to bring his good purposes from it. So I'll offer it to him instead of trying to hold on to it and make it something that's valuable in 5 minutes and 5 days and 5 years, which is not my job, by the way.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that approach also, so you tied it back to our genuineness and faithfulness episode. I think where I was at before this revelation is thinking like, if I'm not experiencing joy 100% of the time, I'm failing. Like I just need to put all the circumstances aside. And that's not what this is asking us to do. It's asking us to consider and weigh circumstances in light of what is reality, what is the bigger picture.
Yeah.
It's not the danger with thinking of joy as something that has to be experienced 100% of the time. Like we're called to it. And I think that's the way that we think ourselves and work our way there.
Yeah.
But if we just plaster over it, like I should be feeling joy, then it's going to get us to diminish and stuff the circumstances and never actually deal with them in a healthy way.
Yeah.
Like it's mind renewal is what essentially what it is for the purpose of getting to joy.
Yeah. It seems like there's a nuance there, but it's also not nuanced at the same time. Like the effect of it is not at all nuanced.
Yeah.
The difference between just kind of plastering over like, all right, I'm about to go, get punched in the face. I'm going to count it as joy. Woohoo. This is a blast, isn't it? It's going to hurt. No, it's actually going to hurt. And how do I look at that in a way? How do I decrease the amount of time it takes for me to consider that and see what God's up to and see who God is and see that there's joy available in that I can take advantage of. Yeah.
And like any good example, let's tie it back to Jesus. Like Jesus, before he was on the cross, was sweating blood.
Yeah.
Right? He was
in distress.
He was feeling all the feels.
Yeah.
And that is the gross overgeneralization. But he was experiencing all of it. Yet Philippians talks about for the joy that was set before him. How could he have joy in that circumstance?
Right. Yeah.
What did that look like? And I think it's holding both of those things together, where it's acknowledging reality and acknowledging greater reality. And that to me, I think is what joy is.
Yeah. That's deep. That's rich. That's invitational as well. Like we have the opportunity to tap into that.
Yeah.
And to learn and invite our daddy, right? Our good Abba Father to teach us his way of joy, as we saw exemplified in Jesus.
Yeah. And I think it brings a whole new meaning to that kid's song. I have the joy, 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 joy down in my heart.
Where?
Down in my heart.
I'm sorry, where?
Down in the depths of my heart.
I don't feel like I'm listening to you very well.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
At least we didn't sing it because it's a musical.
Take 2.
But it brings a whole new meaning because we've talked about the heart being like your deepest, truest you. Like I used to think just heart was like plaster over it, little cartoon heart there. Yeah. But like, what is the deepest, truest you? And is that joy there? Is that actually, is your anchor on who God is, who he says he is? And if it is, like, joy is going to manifest. There might be some time between when a circumstance happens and when you are experiencing that joy.
Yeah.
But that's home. That joy is home. And like we get pulled away from it, but then we return back to that destination of home, of joy.
Yeah.
That's how I think of joy now.
Wow. Well, I'm glad we had this conversation. I feel appropriately challenged.
Yeah.
It feels like a good invitation, a strong invitation. And it feels like the kind of good gift that God would want us to have on our journey as well.
Yeah.
That connection with him is founded in joy.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Thanks for taking us there.
Yeah. No, it was fun. I enjoyed it. So for you, listener, I'm curious, what's joy look like for you? Where would you say you're experiencing joy? And what's home for you? What's that home base? Curious to hear from you. Email us, put something in the comments. We'd love to know how we can help manifest this more for you. Hey folks, thanks for tuning in today. Behind the mics, you've got myself, Chris Conlin, and Mark Wavle, and our lead editor is Derek Donley. We are a crowdfunded nonprofit. Most of what we do is free because of your generous support. Thank you for joining us in our mission to bring 1 million lives closer to fullness in God's design. To support us financially or to learn more, visit humanproject.us. We'll see you next episode.